From Central Indiana's #1 news source, this is Fox 59 Tonight.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us here on Fox 59 Tonight. I'm Cameron Ridle. We appreciate you downloading our new Fox 59 Smart TV app. You can find it in your app store on your smart TV if you have a Roku, Apple TV, or Fire TV. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss any of the conversations we have here every night. At 8 o'clock, we talk about everything from the White House to your house. And actually, both those things we could get into will have an impact on what is happening on the streets of Indianapolis. For the past couple of weekends, it's a typical thing with summer. Crime always goes up, but the police scanners like to go off on a Friday night, a Saturday night, lately involving teenagers, specifically young teenagers below 18. I'm not talking about young adults. That's a different show. What we want to highlight today is that this is a problem involving kids who are 14, 15, 16, 17 years old in downtown Indianapolis, being involved in mass fights, being involved in mass shootings, being involved in fatal shootings. The list goes on. And what happened this past weekend in Indianapolis had 7 people shot, 2 of them dead. 2 of them are 16-year-olds that are no longer with us. And for some reason, that particular shooting at least appears to be the last straw that at least made everybody wake up and try to have this conversation about what are we going to do about what's happening in downtown. A lot has happened since that shooting, with lots of statements from city county councilors, and now a new plan from the city county council that will bring curfew to an earlier hour. This is after IMPD, and the mayor's office said on Saturday that they would have a crackdown and start enforcing the curfew. For those of you who think you've heard that before, you have. In 2024, the mayor's office and chief of police came out and said they were going to enforce curfew. There was never any data on what the result of that was. So now fast forward to 2025. Here we are again, hearing the same message, but this time we have more people jumping in. And one of the people we've heard from is City County Councilor Leroy Robinson, who also is the chair of the Public Safety Committee, who says, hey, great, let's enforce curfew, but we don't have any room for all of these kids at the juvenile detention center, nor do we have the capacity or the staffing to handle an influx of kids coming in on Friday and Saturday night. We're hearing lots of plans and lots of reasons why things can't be done. But nevertheless, this conversation, that is something that shouldn't go away. And so I brought in 2 people who definitely can help chime in on not only solutions, because I think there have been so many solutions that have been laid out, but ways that plans could be put into action. In the studio with us is community advocate Greg Meriweather, and in our virtual studio, Wildstyle Paschall. Gentlemen, you both have had a lot to say over the weekend, and I definitely wanted to continue this conversation so people don't lose sight of what's happening. What are you guys' first thoughts after what happened on 4th of July night?
I'll let Wildstyle go first. It looks like he's in the hood right
now. On Old Indiana Avenue.
Old Indiana Avenue. And I'm in the hood right now. I'm in my house. This was not something, for the last, decade, there's often been shootings late at night on the 4th of July. Like, we know that things have not been getting better. We know that the teens are out of school. It's the summertime. It's the 4th of July on a Friday. And that there was literally nothing else for them to be doing. So I wasn't shocked. I was sad that it was this many people and people were dead, but I wasn't surprised.
Greg, what about you?
Man, after seeing that, I just really wish that my initial thought was, where are the people who claim to be the people who take care of it, the people who the city, the taxpayers pay for? There has been a lot of money and resources put into crime prevention, and when I see things like that and the continuous activities of downtown, I'm concerned with where the money's going.
I was sleeping good on Saturday morning, And I didn't wake up till 11:45. And I saw these texts and calls that we had a mass shooting and that the mayor would be having a press conference at 1:00 that afternoon. So I'm like, it's 11:45. Okay, shower, find the cleanest shirt. Okay, we got a Fox 59 polo right there. Grab that. Let's go. Jump in the shower. Drive downtown. I made it down there about 1:05. Jumped in the same elevator as one of the speakers, Kareem Hines, was going up, and got there for the press conference. It started probably about 1:15, so I had a little pad time, and I wasn't exactly sure what to expect. I think after a shooting like this, and we hear there's something that doesn't even always make the news. I know the week before that, I heard on the police scanner hundreds of kids downtown fighting around midnight, 12:30.
Yep.
Then we've had other shootings, we've had other fights, we've had other things that have gone on. It doesn't always all make the news. And so I was just curious, like, all right, what tone are we going to get from these guys? Because we saw Chief Bailey that morning.
Man.
He was fired up and he was hot. And I believe that frustration from him is genuine. You get tired of showing up to these scenes and you're seeing dead bodies and you're seeing dead kids on the floor. That takes a toll. It took a toll on me when I kept having to see it reporting in the morning. So I believe that part, that frustration is genuine.
Yeah.
We heard from the mayor, who obviously condemned the violence. And then we also heard in that press conference from a number of pastors and community leaders. But at the time, it was not a press conference of this is what we're doing tonight.
Sure.
It wasn't this is our plan kind of a press conference. It was we hated what we saw last night. Come get your kids, and we're coming up with a plan.
I didn't like the press conference personally. I thought it was it looked like these are supposedly the people that people follow. You want to get high profile or whatever you want to call it. You had Kareem, you had Pastor Reynolds, you had Jeffrey Johnson Jr. You had Ralph Durrett, who you did not allow to speak, and then you had Tony Lopez, who was in the office of OPHS. And from my perspective, I was just like, I don't hear from these guys, prior to this. So I don't want to hear from these guys when it happens, because when it's all said and done, I think that if you are truly about that life, it doesn't just show up when the crime takes place. It's ongoing. You are actually like, you know what? You're doing something that's preventative and not just reactive. And I think a lot of those are reaction agents. I think Kareem does stuff. I'm not necessarily, I can't really, I'm not going to knock it. But Wildstyle will tell you, I've been on a call with that. And I get tired of hearing guys who run programs saying the kids that get killed are theirs. I hear it often. And I'm like, well, why? Well, that is a poor statistic when it's all said and done. If you locked up may happen, but when you start really saying your kids are laying in the streets, I'm like, what are you doing? So for me, I didn't really vibe with the whole press conference period.
Well, as you mentioned, the person we didn't get to hear from was Ralph Durrett Jr., whose title is Chief Violence Prevention Officer, which would suggest that it's his job to come
violence prevention.
Youth violence prevention, but Chief Youth Violence Prevention.
Yeah.
And his title would suggest that it's his job to come up with ideas and ways to prevent violence.
Yeah.
We did not hear from him. Ralph is sat in that same seat you're sitting in now, Greg. And earlier this summer, late spring, he talked about how the mayor's office never asked him about a single idea.
It's crazy.
That he has heard from the community or that he has in his book. He has a whole book of ideas and things he wants to implement. And he says no one has ever at the city level asked him, Ralph, what should we do? And it appeared Saturday that the press conference was predetermined on who would talk. And he wasn't one of the people who spoke. And so you would think with a shooting involving youth and violence and a press conference, I guess to talk about how to prevent it, you would talk to the person who is the youth violence prevention officer.
Real.
It's PR blackface.
Explain.
That uh, quite often with the Hogshead administration, you rarely see black people lined up like that at their press conferences. But with the situation it being black youth dead in the streets, now we've got all these black men up on at the press conference standing behind them, and one of the black men that you're paying to come up with solutions to this,
Oof.
you don't listen to, and are basically told to shut up and just put your face up there. It is public relations blackface.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned black and why who's up there.
Yeah.
Because the part that we are not talking about is who is involved in these shootings and fights that are going on downtown. They're showing subliminally showing you and what community is by the people who are standing behind the mayor,
Sure.
but they have not said these are our black kids that are getting killed and that are being involved in these fights downtown. I'm sure we can find the coroner reports and all the statistics if somebody is keeping it, but
I see it on my timeline.
All
yes,
day.
I mean, the kid that was killed, the first one that was killed like dead on the scene, I knew him not real well, but I knew him from the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It is our children down here, and as much as I hate to say that, it is quite often our children down here, but we're often not the ones in the decision making seat on how to address this, no matter what the press conference looks like.
But is it what it seems to me is that we have a white mayor and a white police chief who maybe they haven't said this, but maybe aren't comfortable saying what we just said and are hoping that the people standing next to them have the license to be able to say what the problem is. Because when we get the thing about this is we know when these shootings and fights are happening. We know exactly where they're happening. It's going to be somewhere near Monument Circle in one of these corners, Washington, Illinois. We're not talking about violence all over the city. We're not talking about violence of people who are 30 plus or young adults. We're talking about a specific group of people who show up at a specific place at a specific time.
Kids.
So this, I know everybody keeps saying this is a hard thing for us to solve.
It
doesn't seem that hard to me.
It's not. And the thing is, man, again, going back to the press conference and looking at the people who are up there, a paycheck will do something in our community. It's so bad because I think, when I sit here, me and my brother Wildstyle, we'll talk about it. We're not afraid to say, listen, because I would have turned around and looked at him and said, fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we realize that what we're seeing are the symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going and looking and saying, what's the problem? We're not looking and saying blight, unemployment, all this kind of stuff that's happening in the black community every day. And you think that just because you can, I get so tired of hearing resources.
Mm-hmm.
We're giving them resources. It's not enough.
Well, the other part of this that has yet to show up, but is going to, if we're talking about resources, both our state and federal government has made plans and have signed bills to cut those resources.
Facts.
And so it's not a matter of this might happen. Like, no, if you're on one hand telling me it's resources that we need more resources, but on this hand, you're saying, hey, we're cutting resources. When are we going to realize that it's about to get worse?
What does it mean? And I guess I'm just call me what I am. What does it mean when I see Pastor Reynolds get on the microphone? But I saw him a few years ago sitting with Eric Holcomb at the governor's mansion, realizing that Eric Holcomb signed the bill to make permitless carry a law. when I look and I see all these pastors that go sit at the governor's mansion and they know that he signed one of the strongest stand your ground laws in the country, and all of these people buddy up to him and they was like, Holcomb's our guy, but Holcomb signed a death sentence on black people and black people stood there and cheered with him. So when it's all said and done, it's like I don't want to hear from Pastor Reynolds. I don't see Jeffrey Johnson getting out in these streets. And how do you, Jeffrey Johnson Jr., get to inherit a podium or a place behind the mayor simply because you got Eastern Star? So at that point, you get to say something about kids and crime, and you ain't never known crime in your life because you live probably in Carmel or Fishers or something like that. So at this point, I'm like, I don't want to hear from you either. And then the other people are already on the payroll. So I already know you're not going to talk about blight because you know that if you solve the problem, you end your job. So what's the point?
Do you think, and I hear you when you say that people don't want to solve the problem because it would take them out of a job. But I think I always tell you, this is the thought, my thought, you go one step deeper. And I'm wondering if it's not that deep. If it's not that they don't want to lose their job, it's that nobody is making them, nobody is holding them to say, we have to do something.
I don't think anybody's letting them do anything. I mean, when you talk about, we have a $600 million hotel being built right now that is 100% financed by the city of Indianapolis. That's us.
Preach, bro.
So when you're talking about somebody going up there and saying, well, we got to address this housing crisis, this poverty crisis, this crisis that is making parents afraid to take any time off from work to stay in working 2 or 3 jobs or that have stressed them out and they don't have the capacity to go handle their kids the way we want them to do. If somebody says that and then makes a correlation about all the money we're spending in other places and what we're able to finance for certain people and developers, then they're going to be out of a job.
Preach.
How do we, it seems to me, address the elephant in the room that still the city hasn't called out, and that is one, that this is a teen problem. Because in years past, we had young adult problems, people doing this kind of thing, but so many times. What'd you say?
Still is. I mean, adults is killing each other at
still are
pretty fast rate too.
Still are, but so much now of what ends up on the news are these teenagers who are taking a gun into the game at Lawrence, or who are taking police on a police chase, and they end right here by FOX59, crash over here. I was doing, and it's not even just the boys.
Sure.
It's also the girls.
No. Absolutely.
I was doing a live, my least favorite thing to do here at FOX59 is the 4 a.m. live hit for the morning show. Because it's 4 a.m. And why am I standing out on the corner reporting?
Yeah.
But one of my spots downtown when we do the generic beauty shot is on top of the canal. Because nobody's over there. Nobody messes with you. It's a pretty shot.
I know exactly what you're talking.
Yeah. That's my spot. I'm on TV live at 4:03 in the morning, and I'm like, who is making all that noise and coming down the canal? 4 girls, teenagers.
Real.
I'm like, and when they got up, walked past me, they calmed down and was quiet, and they stopped and kind of, made small talk on the way. But I was like,
what you doing out here?
Yeah, like, y'all okay? Y'all good?
Yeah.
Oh, look, y'all be careful out here. I'm like, and I was like, man, they might be tomorrow's story, because you are down here, 4 girls by yourself. What could you possibly be doing? And does somebody know that you're down here? Is what I thought. Where are your parents to be? And they weren't. I'm not talking like 18-year-old girls. I'm talking like must not have a car. Because why are you walking around downtown?
Yeah.
That is the same group, and that's why at the bottom of the screen I put addressing teen violence in Indy. True. Because we have a teenage problem. And what I did ask the mayor at that press conference was, if these are teenagers under 18, they do not have the same rights as you and me, Mayor. They're children. That's why the law says they must go to school. There are things that the law requires that they do because they don't have the right to make that decision not to. When you get 18, you do your own thing. So my question was, couldn't the city, one, tighten the curfew to something earlier? If Chief of Police, you just said, and I asked him, I said, Chief, you just said nothing good happens after midnight. Why is our curfew 1 a.m. then? Well, we're following the state law. Well, couldn't you make it tighter than the state law? Well, now the council has literally now done that, has now sent that proposal out. But my point to the mayor was, these are kids and teenagers. When they walk on one of my buses as a bus driver, the law says I am responsible for them, and you must do what I say because you're a child in my care. So isn't it the same thing? Like if the kids go to school, school's responsible for them. If they're on a city street after curfew, can't the city, or does the city have some kind of responsibility to do something? I'm not talking about should they have to do this, but when weekend after weekend we're having hundreds of kids fighting and kids getting shot, doesn't that make you like, okay, we have to do something as a city government? Because you keep calling for their parents. Their parents already ain't doing the job.
That was my reason for my post when I said something about the council and the voice of a council, especially the ones, that look like us. I said, how many kids are going to drop in the streets before you utilize your voice even?
Mm-hmm.
And, and their response was a lot of them put out, statements. But at the same time, it's like we need, and this is just how I feel, we need to stop with the party politics and do people politics, because there's a reason that they live in the community that they're a counselor over.
Mm-hmm.
They're responsible.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. We know a lot of stuff is happening. But when it's all said and done, that's the whole purpose of it. You basically take this fiduciary responsibility over the community in which you reside. Therefore, you should be pushing for legislation or rules, laws that impact your community in a positive way. What we see is a lot of people who are trying to remain good with the party,
Mm-hmm.
not caring about what happens with the people that live in their neighborhoods.
Well, you get kicked out of the party pretty quickly these
Real
days.
quick. But I like what I'm seeing, but that's another story.
Yes, that's another show. So what I had asked the mayor and the chief of police, I said, look, I keep hearing solutions, searching for solutions. Like that rolls off my tongue because we've said it so much over the years. I said, what about this? I hear you when you say just taking kids down to the juvenile center and then they go out the back door isn't going to solve anything. I hear you with that, Chief. I think most people would agree. But what I'm hearing you say every time is parents come get your kids. Parents come get your kids. And you're saying it from 50,000 feet. Most people who hear you, their kid is at home.
Facts.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So how do we talk to the kids? How do we talk to the parents of the kids who are down there on Friday and Saturday after curfew? I said, what if you get one, because the first thing you're going to say is they're going to talk about manpower, which we've already heard.
Sure.
And I know you both have thoughts on that, so I'm going to let you go in on that. But I said, what if you got all these community groups? And I said, I'm talking about everybody from Boys and Girls Club to New Boy.
Mm-hmm.
School resource officers from the local school districts who, in theory, should be better at handling kids.
Sure.
In theory. And IMPD. And you guys start, hey, it's getting toward midnight. Time to pack it up and roll out.
That's right.
Now, if at 12:30, we set curfew at midnight, and at 12:30 you're still there, any of these people that I just named off, I need y'all to come on with me. We're going to go over here. We're going to get on this bus. That bus takes you over to the Community Justice Complex.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're not going inside the building, but we're going to hold some kids. The kids are going to wait there until their parents arrive.
Mm-hmm.